How can Ryan become the CEO when I'm the person who rescued this hotel? My voice reverberated throughout the recently remodeled lobby, echoing off the contemporary mountain-themed decorations I had spent countless months perfecting. Mom's casual dismissal struck me like a physical blow. "Claire, sweetheart, your brother possesses superior innate leadership qualities. You focus too much on minor details," she explained as though speaking to a young child. At that moment, Ryan walked in casually with his hands tucked in his pockets, displaying that arrogant grin I'd recognized since childhood. "Hello, sister. Don't make this personal. Somebody has to manage the daily operations while I concentrate on broader strategies. I am Claire Anderson, and at 52 years old, I never imagined I would be battling for acknowledgement within my own family's enterprise. Following 20 prosperous years managing hotels in Chicago, I had sacrificed everything to return home to Colorado and assist our failing family hotel. The situation was deeply ironic. I was the sole person with genuine hospitality expertise, whereas my younger sibling Ryan had jumped from job to job, never maintaining employment for longer than 12 months. What truly infuriates me is this. 8 months prior, my father contacted me while crying, explaining they were mere weeks from financial ruin. I didn't pause to consider. I liquidated my Chicago condominium, withdrew my life savings, and returned home to provide assistance. The hotel remained frozen in decades past, outdated interior design, zero social media activity, and customer feedback that made me wince. I labored around the clock, updating everything from the booking platform to the reception area furnishings. Only God knows how many evenings I spent bent over financial documents, bargaining with vendors, and educating employees. I even utilized my professional network to secure coverage in tourism publications, and the strategy succeeded. The change was remarkable. Mountain Pine Lodge transformed from a 2-star disaster into the community's most talked-about destination. Our reservations increased twofold, and for the initial time in years, we were generating actual profits. Every element, from the regionally sourced art pieces to the enhanced facilities, was thoughtfully selected to provide guests with a memorable experience. However, standing here currently, observing Ryan smirk while our parents transfer ownership of everything I constructed to him, I understand that none of my efforts matter to them. The most painful aspect is their plan to announce his advancement during tonight's employee gathering, the identical meeting where I was scheduled to share our unprecedented quarterly earnings. I can sense our staff members watching me, particularly Sarah, our head of housekeeping who has worked here for 2 decades. They all understand who genuinely transformed this establishment, yet like myself, they must stand here and witness the charade unfold, pretending the situation is somehow acceptable or just. Allow me to provide some background to explain our current circumstances. Mountain Pine Lodge has belonged to our family since my grandparents constructed it in 1971. I essentially matured within these corridors, mastering every component of the operation from the foundation up. While other children engaged in make-believe, I was assisting Mom with guest registrations and observing Dad handle repair tasks. The hotel served as my second residence, and I cherished every moment of it. Ryan, however, was completely different. 3 years my junior, he never displayed any enthusiasm for the family enterprise. While I pursued hospitality management studies in university, he switched between academic programs, initially architecture, then business, ultimately abandoning his education entirely to discover himself. Mom and Dad never appeared troubled by this behavior. "He's simply artistic," they would explain. "He requires time to determine his path." Meanwhile, I was developing my profession in Chicago, advancing from front desk manager to regional director for a prominent hotel corporation. Each achievement I accomplished received half-hearted congratulations from my family. "That's pleasant, dear, but when will you return home? When will you find a husband?" Nothing I did was ever sufficient. When Dad telephoned regarding the hotel's financial difficulties, I understood precisely what required attention. The establishment was losing money rapidly, obsolete systems, wasteful procedures, no genuine marketing plan. The online reviews were devastating. Trapped in history, requires significant improvements, not worth the cost. It shattered my heart to witness my family's heritage deteriorating. I requested time off from my Chicago position, which ultimately became a permanent departure, and committed myself to the rescue operation. The initial month involved only emergency repairs, fixing malfunctioning equipment, modernizing the reservation system, instructing staff in fundamental customer service. I used my personal funds to replace the ancient carpeting and renovate the lobby. Every dollar I invested was strategically planned to achieve maximum returns. What particularly frustrates me is that Ryan wasn't even present during this entire process. He was away in Denver, allegedly building professional connections, but actually just socializing with his friends. He would appear occasionally for family meals, offer some vague recommendations about updating our methods, then vanish again. Somehow, in my parents' perspective, his sporadic contributions equaled my constant hard work. I continued telling myself the effort would prove worthwhile, that once they witnessed the outcomes, the enhanced ratings, increased bookings, positive feedback, they would finally acknowledge my contributions. I suppose I should have realized better. The previous 3 weeks have been a disaster. Ryan parades around as if he controls the property, implementing modifications everywhere without comprehending how hotels actually function. Just yesterday, he chose to eliminate our complimentary breakfast service to reduce expenses, apparently unaware that our breakfast ratings represent one of our primary advantages. When I attempted to present the guest satisfaction information, he simply laughed and responded, "Statistics aren't everything, sis." However, what truly exceeded my tolerance occurred this morning. I arrived to discover him terminating Marina, our housekeeping supervisor who has been with us for 15 years. His justification: she wasn't adaptable enough regarding his new scheduling arrangement, a system that would have left us dangerously short-staffed during busy checkout periods. I managed to intervene and preserve her position, but the expression of shame on her face will remain with me indefinitely. I attempted discussing this with Mom and Dad. I presented spreadsheets demonstrating our advancement, guest reviews complimenting our recent enhancements, even financial forecasts for the upcoming quarter. Dad simply stared at his coffee while Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you must allow your brother time to establish himself. He has such brilliant concepts." That's when I noticed it, the for sale sign at the old Riverside Lodge while driving home. It had been our primary competition for years before deteriorating last season. I pulled into the lot, my thoughts racing. The property possessed tremendous potential, superior views compared to our hotel, closer proximity to the ski areas, and a much larger spa facility. Certainly, it required renovation, but I knew exactly how to handle it. I remained in my vehicle for nearly an hour, staring at that sign and reflecting on every occasion my parents had overlooked me in favor of Ryan, every accomplishment dismissed, every recommendation questioned, every contribution undervalued. Something within me broke, or perhaps it finally fell into place. I contacted my real estate agent right there in the parking area. The owners were motivated to sell, and thanks to my savings and excellent credit score, I could make it happen. By the time I returned home, I had already arranged a property viewing for the following morning. For the first time in months, I felt invigorated, even excited. I wouldn't have to watch Ryan demolish everything I had constructed. Instead, I would build something fresh, something that belonged entirely to me. Let them witness what they surrendered when they selected him over me. The subsequent months were a flurry of activity. I invested everything into converting the Riverside Lodge into something exceptional. While Ryan was occupied hosting parties at Mountain Pine Lodge, I was collaborating with contractors, redesigning areas, and assembling a team of elite hospitality experts. I named it the Summit, perhaps slightly obvious, but I wanted everyone to understand exactly what I was pursuing. News spread throughout town rapidly. Some individuals called me vindictive for competing against my own family. Others, especially those who had worked with me at Mountain Pine, quietly supported me. My parents initially attempted guilt manipulation. "How could you do this to your brother, to us?" Mom would inquire during our increasingly infrequent family dinners. I simply smiled and shifted the conversation. Meanwhile, Ryan's poor management was damaging Mountain Pine Lodge. Their reviews began declining, with complaints about unreliable service, maintenance problems, even sanitation issues. 3 veteran staff members resigned within his first month of leadership. I learned through local gossip that they had to reduce their prices significantly just to maintain bookings. The Summit's grand opening occurred exactly 6 months after that crucial day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's expressions when they entered. Mom's forced smile barely concealed her astonishment, Dad's wide eyes surveying the crowded venue, and Ryan's barely hidden fury. The local newspaper was present, photographing and interviewing guests about Aspen's newest luxury establishment. "You're attempting to ruin us," Ryan whispered angrily when he confronted me near the bar. "This is a direct assault on our family." I simply smiled and responded, "No, Ryan, this is me achieving success in spite of our family." The difference between the two hotels couldn't have been more obvious. While Mountain Pine Lodge struggled with basic upkeep, the Summit was creating buzz with its environmentally friendly programs and luxury features. Every detail I had envisioned implementing at the family hotel but had been rejected was now reality here, from the locally sourced restaurant offerings to the cutting-edge spa equipment. Everything matched my exact vision. However, success created its own difficulties. Other hotels began imitating our innovative reservation platform. Some townspeople, longtime friends of my parents, started gossiping about how I was dividing the family. Even some of my devoted guests from Mountain Pine Lodge felt guilty about taking sides. The genuine challenges emerged as the Summit gained recognition. My former suppliers from Mountain Pine Lodge began receiving pressure not to work with me. Mom had quite an extensive social network in town, and suddenly some long-term family friends stopped meeting me for our regular coffee visits. I even lost my position on the local tourism committee. Apparently, there was a conflict of interest. But I wasn't going to allow small-town politics to derail everything I had built. When local vendors hesitated, I discovered superior ones in Denver. When the tourism board dismissed me, I concentrated on establishing direct partnerships with ski tour companies. Every barrier only motivated me to become more creative, more resolute. Then arrived the ultimate challenge. Mom and Dad appeared at my office one morning looking concerned. The bank was threatening to demand immediate payment of Mountain Pine's debts. Ryan's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to return, not as CEO, naturally, but to assist Ryan in learning the business. "We're family," Mom begged. "You can't simply allow the hotel to collapse." I looked at both of them sitting across from my desk in the office I had built myself and felt strangely peaceful. "I offered assistance 8 months ago," I replied. "You selected Ryan. Now you must accept that decision." Dad attempted a different strategy. "Consider your grandfather's heritage," he said quietly. "This hotel has belonged to our family for generations." "And I attempted to preserve that heritage," I responded sharply. "You're the ones who gave it to someone who treats it like his personal entertainment venue." The local rumors became more vicious after that. I was the ungrateful daughter, the resentful sister, the woman who would betray her own family out of malice. Some days those stories hurt more than I would admit, but every morning I would enter the Summit's lobby, see my vision realized, and know I had made the correct choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who changed jobs, exhausted by Ryan's chaotic management approach. They understood what I was creating here wasn't about vengeance. It was about establishing something meaningful, something we could all take pride in. The breaking point arrived during the annual Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards. The Summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, and Mountain Pine Lodge was notably missing from any category. I was seated in the ballroom surrounded by my team when they announced our victory. As I walked to the platform, I spotted my parents at the back of the room. They had appeared unexpectedly, probably expecting to support our family hotel as they had for years. The expression on their faces revealed everything. Mom was struggling to hold back tears, and Dad looked like he had aged a decade. Ryan wasn't there. He had stopped attending industry functions months earlier, claiming they were merely popularity competitions. However, everyone in that room understood what this moment signified. The detail-focused daughter had constructed something superior to the family legacy they had refused to entrust her with. During my acceptance speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first developed my passion for hospitality. The audience's uncomfortable movement indicated they understood my subtle criticism. But the conversation afterward truly changed everything. A respected travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we discussed the Summit's success, my parents remained nearby, clearly listening. They heard every word as I described my journey, including how being overlooked for CEO had inspired me to build something of my own. Sometimes the greatest success stories emerge from being underestimated. I stated loudly enough for them to hear. That evening, the magazine editor informed me they were naming the Summit the best boutique hotel in the Rockies in their upcoming publication. The same issue would include an article about traditional hotels struggling to adapt, with Mountain Pine Lodge as their primary example. When the article was published, it was like an explosion in our small town. Everyone who had whispered about me being spiteful had to acknowledge the reality. I had created something exceptional while Mountain Pine Lodge was failing, not because of me, but because of their own poor choices. Reflecting on everything, it's difficult not to experience mixed emotions. Part of me still aches from how my parents treated me, how they dismissed everything I had accomplished as if it were meaningless. But another part of me, perhaps the larger part, feels liberated. I'm living life according to my standards, not waiting for someone else's approval. When I enter the Summit every morning, I'm reminded of what I built with my own efforts. The lively lobby buzzes with activity, guests chatting enthusiastically about their daily plans, staff moving efficiently with genuine smiles, the subtle fragrance of fresh coffee mixing with the crisp mountain air that enters when the doors open. It's everything I ever wanted Mountain Pine Lodge to become, and seeing it prosper gives me profound satisfaction. My team at the Summit has become my family in ways I never anticipated. Many of them, like Sarah and Maria, are former employees of my parents' hotel who left because they recognized the same leadership deficiency I did. They've been crucial in making the Summit successful, and their dedication humbles me. Sarah often jokes that she finally feels her experience, and suggestions are appreciated, and I understand exactly what she means. Outside of work, I've begun reconnecting with old friends. For years, I was so consumed with trying to prove myself to my parents that I allowed important relationships to deteriorate. Now I'm making time for coffee meetings and hiking trips, rebuilding those connections. Some townspeople who initially criticized my decision to compete with my family have even changed their minds, admitting they respect what I've accomplished. I've also started finding my place within the community again. Hosting events at the Summit has helped me re-establish old relationships and even create new ones. Just last month, we organized a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event area, and it was tremendously successful. Seeing people unite for a worthy cause reminded me why I wanted to work in hospitality initially, to create spaces that bring people happiness and comfort. But it's not entirely perfect. There are moments, especially during quiet evenings, when I think about my parents and Ryan. As much as they've wounded me, I wish circumstances could be different. I found myself wondering if they've ever truly comprehended the sacrifices I made to rescue our family's legacy. Still, I've come to understand that their approval isn't something I require anymore. My success, my happiness, they belong to me, and no one can steal them away. For so long, I existed in the shadow of their expectations, but now I'm finally standing in my own light. It was approximately 3 weeks after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards when my parents finally contacted me again. They invited me for dinner, just the 3 of us. I hesitated momentarily but decided to attend. I wanted to hear their words, even though I wasn't expecting a genuine apology. When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was different. My mom welcomed me with an anxious smile, and my dad avoided making eye contact, fidgeting with his timepiece the way he always did when uncomfortable. During dinner, they began with casual conversation. How the weather was unusually mild for the season, how they had heard about the Summit's latest 5-star review. I could tell they were preparing for something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said, "Claire, we wanted to express that we're proud of your accomplishments." My mom quickly added, "We understand we haven't always demonstrated it, but we do acknowledge how much effort you've invested. The Summit it's extraordinary." I wanted to feel pleased about their words, but they felt hollow. It seemed like too little, too late, especially after years of being overlooked. Instead, I simply nodded and waited for what I knew was approaching next. Sure enough, my mom launched into it. "Ryan's been having difficulties. The hotel isn't performing well, and he's overwhelmed. We were wondering if you could perhaps mentor him, help us restore things to proper order." For a moment, I remained silent. I allowed their words to linger in the air while I looked at both of them, really examined them. My mom with her perfectly manicured nails clutching her wine glass slightly too firmly, and my dad who seemed to be studying the tablecloth as if it contained all the solutions to their problems. "I offered assistance a year ago," I finally said, my voice calm but resolute. "I abandoned my life in Chicago to save Mountain Pine Lodge. You chose to place Ryan in charge, knowing he wasn't prepared, knowing I possessed the experience to make it successful. You didn't want my leadership then, and now that everything has collapsed, you're asking me to intervene. I'm sorry, but I cannot do that." My mom opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand to silence her. "I'll provide advice if you want it. I can suggest strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff. But I'm not returning to repair what Ryan has damaged. That's no longer my responsibility." They didn't know how to respond. My dad finally mumbled something about understanding my position, but the disappointment on his face was evident. My mom appeared as though she wanted to argue further, but for once, she didn't persist. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Establishing those boundaries wasn't simple, but it was essential. I wasn't bending over backward to please my parents or cleaning up Ryan's mistakes. I was choosing myself, my happiness, and my future. Over the following weeks, I noticed a change in how I conducted myself. Refusing my parents gave me the confidence to enforce boundaries in other aspects of my life as well. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to people, whether regarding work or personal matters. I became more comfortable releasing relationships that no longer benefited me, instead focusing on those that brought me joy and support. At the summit, we achieved new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the region's highest, and we began receiving inquiries from other boutique hotel owners requesting consulting services. My parents' hotel, meanwhile, continued declining, though I did hear they finally employed a professional hospitality consultant to attempt a turnaround. Ryan and I barely communicated, and I was comfortable with that. He didn't apologize or acknowledge what had occurred, but I no longer needed him to. His resentment was his burden to bear, not mine. The summit had become a reflection of everything I had worked for: my resilience, my vision, my independence. And as it flourished, so did I. Standing in the summit's lobby one morning, I watched sunlight pour through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow over the modern decor I had designed. A family walked past, laughing as they planned their day, while one of my staff expertly handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. It struck me in that moment how far I had progressed, not just professionally, but personally. 4 years, I had measured my value by my parents' approval, by their ability to see and acknowledge my contributions. But now I realized I didn't need that anymore. What I had built here wasn't just a hotel, it was proof of my resilience, my creativity, and my ability to thrive despite the obstacles placed in my path. The journey had been difficult. Releasing the hope that my family would change was painful, but it also liberated me. I no longer felt bound by the weight of their expectations or their dismissal. Instead, I felt proud of what I had created, proud of the team I had developed, and proud of the life I was living. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards ceremony was the type of event I used to fantasize about attending. The room was filled with excitement, packed with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from throughout the state. As the announcer began listing the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I caught a glimpse of my mom and dad seated toward the room's rear. Their faces were unreadable, but I could sense the significance of what this moment meant to all of us. When the summit was announced as the winner, the room burst into applause. My team cheered as I walked to the stage, my heart racing as I accepted the award. I glanced at my parents. My dad gave me a small nod, and my mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I had long since stopped expecting but still appreciated in its own way. After the ceremony, I joined my team in celebration. My parents didn't approach me, and I didn't go to them. This was my moment, and I wanted to share it with the people who had helped me achieve it. I felt truly free from the need for their approval, free from the shadows of their choices. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, deserving, and enough. And as I raised a glass with my team that night, I knew I had finally found peace.